this week's show, we talk about everything SCCA runoffs. Welcome to the Insider Report. Welcome to another episode of the Insiders Report. I'm your host, Errol Tucker, and joining me from Germantown, Tennessee is Jim Daniels. How you doing, Jim?
Hey, guys. Doing wonderful.
Good, good. And from Cocoa Beach, Florida, Peter King. How you doing,
Excellent,
Peter?
Guys.
Obviously, you got home safe from the runoffs.
Yeah, we only blew one tire, so that's a pretty good run for our effort.
Good deal. So, this is, as we mentioned in our other show, championship month for club racing. And this past weekend was the SCCA runoffs, the 49th running of those runoffs. And next year is going to be a big year for them with their 50th running. So we have a lot of news to talk about, a lot of records. Records fell this past week, and a lot of drama went on the track. I think the first and notable story would be Mr. Scott Tucker basically shattering the track record, Peter.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think we knew, Jim and I definitely knew that was coming in, that, they built a DSR that was going to beat the 2-minute record, and they went out and proved it, did it easy. They ran 158s all weekend, and, I think if they were ever pressured that they were, they could go quicker than that. To be honest with you, there was some drama to begin with because they were afraid that the CSR might break it first, but it didn't happen. So, if somebody in the CSR class was close, was flirting, they were at that 2-minute mark, but it didn't happen that way. And Tucker went out in the first qualifying session, ran a 158, and the rest is history. So he is the first person to be under 2 minutes in a club race car at Road America.
Yeah, phenomenal feat. I like listening to the announcers. They were saying, he's got a tad bit more than 200 horsepower, and the other cars are pushing 200 out of those motorcycle engines. And I tweeted the show, and I said, guys, I think he's got a tad bit more than the tad bit more you think he does.
Right.
They were on the grid. They were on the grid that did a piece about how most of the cars were not being painted to save the 35 pounds in weight. And then there's Tucker's car, just elaborately painted, floated out, Bondo where you needed to have it, so it just looks mirrored, painted, had a 100-pound paint job on it, and an impressive drive. You ride around the middle of the track, not using the track outs and hitting half the apexes and turn 59s. It's something else.
Yeah, that was kind of remarkable, what happened there. Now, Peter, you're connected with, we have a lot to talk about in this runoff, so we don't want to spend too much time on any one topic because we have so much to talk about. But you're connected with, the rule sets, and from what I understand, some of the folks in SCCA are actually kind of surprised and now maybe looking at what needs to be done if Scott Tucker is going to come and just dominate that class.
Well, there's a couple of issues, that we're looking at combining CSR and DSR for 2014.
Which is needed.
Exactly, and I think that's the right thing. And one of the ideas that we've brought up is to create an SR2 class that's around, essentially S2000 goes away. So there's we're talking about creating an SR2 class, which would be a flat bottom, car. Try and bring back the home-built DSRs from the 90s, slot a Radical in there. Use the pro-European S2000 car and just try and make it at a lesser, a more inexpensive, platform at SR2.
Well, wait a minute. I thought that SCCA was trying to get rid of some and combine some classes. Now it sounds like you're talking about maybe creating another class.
Well, no,
don't we have too many classes?
Well, I agree with you, Tucker, but really we're making 3 into 2. Essentially, CSR and DSR are the same things. There's 3 or 4 cars at the pointy end of the field, and then the also rans. And then S2000 is just a class that it hasn't been well subscribed for a long time. So essentially, we're taking 3 classes and hoping making 2 strong ones, and try and go right at what's the market. And the other thing, the funny thing,
entice some of those old cars to come back, which could help and boost those fields. Because when the store came on the scene, a lot of those old cars just evaporated, but they're still out there and people are tinkering with them.
Right, and I agree. And honestly, I still think that there's guys that want to work in their garage, and if they don't want to get into tunnels, so flat bottoms is the way to go. And hopefully that revives sports racing. To be honest with you, the funny thing is there's big complaining that you can't combine CSR and DSR at the tent meeting, and essentially it's a 2.5-page rule set that they share the same rule set. So we got to do a little bit of engine balancing and call it a day. So the one point they brought up is, well, what's the standard for DSR? And essentially the CRB told a member in the crowd, well, it's Tucker. Well, you can't count Tucker. I said, well, yeah, you can. It's an unlimited class, and now Tucker is the standard, so right. There's some heartburn there. But anyway, I mean, hopefully it all works out.
Hey, as a fan, Peter, the main thing that I would like us never forget is that we're the Sports Car Club of America.
Right.
And the definition of a sports car need not be lost when we're forming these classes.
Right. So
we've got to have sports
now
cars
in Honda, so let's move on to another topic here. Honda wins in Formula F. So
yeah, 10 years too long.
That's their first national championship.
Yeah, it's 10 years too long. I really like the newer regime of the club, Peter, and the work you guys do, trying to recognize these members,
right.
trying to, knowing that when we don't satisfy our membership, they go to NASA and they go to other venues.
Right.
And one way to accomplish that is you got a dying class that has no parts, but it could be popular. We got to take action fast, like putting that Honda Fit motor in these cars. And it's been done. And if we would have been thinking progressive like this 5 or 10 years ago, we'd have a big, huge field. And I think the field's going to come back. But I really encourage you guys. I applaud you for one. And I encourage you guys to look at every class that way, like you did STL and making IT racers a place to race, and try to keep the membership as a whole and the masses in mind as opposed to few.
Well, I think one of the good things about that is we brought that Honda in a little bit down on power or whatever, and then finally, we gave it a restrictor bump. And you talk about this all the time, Jim, about program or drivers or whatever. And I'm not trying to slight any of the guys that ran the Hondas to begin with, but finally they got on par with the Ford motors, and we had some top flight Formula F guys hop to Hondas this year, and it showed. Essentially, it was a Honda wins and a Ford was second. I mean, the biggest problem I thought with the Fords, and I love the guys from Ford, is that to have a really strong Ford motor, there was only a few of them out there in the country that had the correct heads. Now with this Honda motor, anybody can go buy a Honda motor and be within 1 horsepower of everybody else. Right. So
be able to be competitive right out the box.
So
yeah, and then that's what I mean when you guys are forming those classes. Everything has to be taken into account of what is available to people, what's going to require so much R&D, and what's a bolt and go. And a bolt and go that's economical is how we're going to boost class count.
Right.
It's not going to be by pandering to the few.
Exactly. Speaking about Ford, the Mustangs win in T2.
Yeah.
I know you're close to that, Jim.
Well, I had Pratt Cole in that field, and he was running back there 4th and 5th and lost the cam sensor. And so he's having to cycle the car while he was running out there. Still got the move of the race, an outside move. Anybody who watches that race needs to watch that move he did. Outside of turn 1, full bore, 2 cars, 4-wheel drift. It was an awesome move, and then the car went away. And Mr. Knowles does it again. He has an uncanny knack for picking the car in the right year and arriving with the championship effort. Kudos to him.
Well, exactly. Congratulations to Santa Claus. He pulls off another one. But, the one thing that cracks me up, we've been taking a lot of heat with the Schromm Stock and Touring consolidation. So it was good to see. I love Marty Grant or whatever, but essentially, Kevin Fandozzi's been doing the modeling on our things, and Kevin's within a couple of tenths of what those guys can run in those cars. So it kind of cracks me up. They complain that they don't understand modeling, but Kevin a month ago told us what they were going to run at Road America, depending on the weather conditions. And the same thing goes with Andrew and the T2 Mustang. Again, the T1 race is kind of a sleeper. Mr. Buttermore does a great job, runs a 20. The best Andrew can do is a 22, and that Boss Mustang, which I don't know, God, I know it makes at least 440 wheels. I don't know what it makes total,
Yeah.
So, that's all was, predicted by Kevin as well. So hopefully this consolidation goes through, or class management. I'm sorry, the board's now telling me to call it class management. It goes through for next year. And,
there's a lot of people complaining about that. But every time we get to the track, it's proving that this modeling is pretty damn close.
It's pretty damn close.
I don't understand how there's one thing to speculate, but once you go to the track, the naysayers need to say, hey, this works. They really, if I had advised anyone working a program and working the officials for rules. You need to embrace this modeling that they use, because they're proving every time that they're near right. When they're not near right, they're making the adjustments necessary, moving cars at different classes, weight or what have you. And to buck that when you're speculating and they got the data, track data, I would advise everyone to get off of that bandwagon and get on the wagon and work in the system that's in place, because it's obviously working.
Right.
Got you. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about some more of the SCCA runoffs. We have, of course, all the drama from Spec Miata, and then Mazda getting the sweep in STL. No. We're going to be talking about that and a lot more.
All right.
We'll be right back. Welcome to another episode of Racing No Filter. Joining me in sunny California, Bill Wood, and down in sunny Florida, Peter King.
We're going to take a look at some of the products HPD has created for the 2012 Honda Civic, and specifically we're going to show you how to install an adjustable sway bar.
Until then, folks out there, you take care.
Want to keep up with all the racing action at the track? Well, download the new GoRacingTV iPhone and Android app. And remember to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to the Insiders Report. So we have a lot more to talk about in reference to the SCCA Championship runoffs. We'll start before, because I know the last topic here that we'll get into will throw a bunch of conversation, so we'll leave the Spec Miata man drama for last. But Mazda gets a sweep in STL. What do you think about that, Peter?
Well, first of all, you kind of tricked me up there, Tucker. I thought we were going to talk about Level 5 and Tucker in the second segment, so now I've done my wardrobe change, so I'm leaning in here so everybody can see the hat that I got from the Level 5 DSR party. I went down there, we ate really good, there was nice food, pretty girls, laid out there. It looked like a museum right there in the paddock of Road America, so I just one more time.
What's fun about that? What's fun about that is our rules nemesis, or our rules buddy, Dave Mead, who's always in the mix of every rules battle that we have. Is one of their drivers and team members, and so it's bittersweet when you go down there. You get to hang out with Dave when he's not wearing his beat up on everybody about the rules hat.
Right, well, yeah, exactly. Dave's a pain in the ass. So anyway, let's go back to STL. I'm sorry, the Mazda sweep. Guess what? Okay. Here's the headline. If you look at any of the forums or whatever, the Mazda forums, anything. Right. Oh, STL is a front-wheel drive Honda classes. The Mazda have no chance. Wait a second. They're on the podium. It's top 3 cars. So that's pretty funny. I mean, I didn't really like the result. I mean, I kind of knew it was coming, but, I like that. I don't have any problem that, Mazda won. It was a great race between, Jim Drago and Ray Huffmaster. So, I mean, it's a growing class. I mean, heck, 6 months ago we didn't even know it would be at the runoff, so it's good that it was an exhibition. We'll get it right for next year. And the other thing is,
it was an interesting exhibition. I mean, between Huffmaster and Drago, they were leaning on each other quite a bit, huh, Jim?
It was the best race of the weekend. Announcers called it the best race of the weekend. It's as aggressive as you could be without getting a ferruled black flag. And if it wasn't a 4.5 mile track, they probably would have got a ferruled black flag for some of those moves. But it was a hell of a race. And for speaking about this class, Peter, and people are going to hate me about this, but with all the black magic of a Spec Miata, it is actually cheaper to build an STL Miata that will run at the front, in my opinion, knowing what I know, than it is a program in Spec Miata. So the ITers out there in the world who like tinkering a little bit more than showroom stock or Spec Miata, like a diverse class with different manufacturers, this thing should be really popular. I tweeted this on the show to Randy Popes and those guys over the weekend. It is the most exciting class the club has right now, from my opinion.
Well, that's the other thing, Jim. I mean, we tried to, gear it around the IT guys, open the rules up just a little bit to get rid of the, the IT nuances, washer bottles and, defrosters and things like that. But I mean, I agree with you. Plus, people don't know, but the board of directors will allow us to do alternate motors for next year. So, now people like Volkswagen, Toyotas, and Nissans can use world motors, and both STU and STL is just going to get better once we start, bringing those type world motors in and making them competitive. So I agree with you. I mean, we got a little bit bump. I don't think it's as broken as people think. I mean, we'll fix it. It's not going to be big changes to straighten out STL. And I mean, we obviously got a turbo car issue and STU, which I can talk about to however long, but I don't think it's that hard to fix that as well.
Gotcha. So let's talk real quick about the new schedule that they ran this year. I got a chance to talk to the president of SCCA, Jeff Donnert, about the schedule, and this is what he had to say. I know you have a new schedule. Tell us a little bit about that schedule and how it came to being, basically in response to your membership.
We poll our members every year after the event to find out what they liked, what they didn't like. And one thing that we were hearing for many years now is that they wanted to see a shorter event, that being here for a solid week or more was too much. We got feedback from many people that said that if it was shorter, I'd be able to come and do this, but I just can't take any more time off of work or whatever other commitments they have. So we are trying something new this year where we are interspersing qualifying with races, and we have races starting on Thursday as opposed to in the past we've raced Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you race Thursday, you're doing your qualifying on Tuesday and Wednesday, or Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and if you don't race till Sunday, you don't start your qualifying until Thursday. So it kind of staggers. There's pros and cons of that, and having talked to a lot of the members this week, right now it's mixed. Some really like it. Some like it the way it was before. People who are going to come in and test are going to have to be here all week anyway. And
I think that's just it, the testing situation. But, some people, as you said, I'm walking around a paddock and I'm getting mixed reviews. Some people like the situation. I guess it really depends on when their race may have fallen this year, because I know you also rotate when each race kind of comes up in the schedule each year. So I guess if you were back in the schedule on Sunday, then you kind of had to stay if you wanted to test, so on and so forth. But, it's good to see that you guys are at least listening to the membership and trying to come up with some sort of solution, and I think people appreciate that.
That's the message I think everybody should take away from this is not just the specifics of the schedule, but that you're now seeing the willingness to try some new things. Not just in the schedule. We've got the majors program that we're talking about, which is something new. And I think people are very open to that. And as I talk to members, they say, well, I'm not quite sure I fully know if this is the right thing or the wrong thing. But, boy, it's sure nice to see them trying something. It's sure nice to see you listening to the membership and giving some things a shot. So I think it's been very positive.
So, guys, Jeff kind of addresses some of the, the things that people are saying out there about the new schedule. Peter, you actually ran in this event, other than Jim and I, you were actually a competitor. Tell me from a competitor standpoint what you thought.
Well, I mean, I to be honest with you, I didn't like the schedule, but I got to be honest, I would have to be, as a CRB member, be there all week long anyway. So I essentially did nothing Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday but go to the temp meetings and get yelled at. So, I mean, I didn't like that part of it. The other, but full disclosure, I broke a shock in the test days and overnighted the shock home, and they overnighted back. If I didn't have those 3 days down, I didn't race this year. So, I mean, I'm kind of in a weird scenario. I didn't like the schedule, but also the schedule allowed me to compete and break another shock in the race. So, it's
from a fan standpoint, without it being announced that much, and
right.
I want to think that the TV broadcast is for the fans. It's not for the crews and drivers to watch when they get back home on tape. So
right.
It's for the fans. The schedule was difficult. You're looking there on a Thursday night trying to see who the grids are for the weekend and what have you, and it's not finished yet.
Right.
And that really threw me off. And most everyone I'm talking to was like, we didn't have grids for half the classes, and people were still trying to get qualifying setups while we were doing qualifying after a race. People were on the fence thinking somebody won a Formula Atlantic National Championship when it was actually just qualifying. It was kind of weird.
Well, that's a great point, Jim, because I qualified Saturday night at 6 o'clock, the last session on the track. Well, 2/3 of the guys have gone home. Their races are over. You know,
Yeah.
so I think one of my constructive criticisms would be once you start racing, it's racing. There's no more qualifying. So we need to qualify and then start the racing and go for however that works out. But I mean,
Agreed.
Yeah, because I think that, what ends up happening is the paddock just empties out very quickly, and, the guys who are at the tail end of the schedule, they feel like they're at a regional race because there's just not.
And I said that to you guys earlier. I mean, if I was going to name this schedule, it'd be how to make the paddock never look full. And that's a sad fact. There was guys rolling in there on Thursday. So it just never. I mean, I don't know how many times I heard the announcement. So and so's got a car in the spot where this guy's trying to park. It was crazy. It was all week long. You think usually we move in there, you're all set up, and it was just a weird vibe. The tent meetings were all screwed up about who was there. So it was multiple classes. Usually we try and clump them together, and I don't know. It was just very difficult to operate.
Well, the other thing is that anytime you have change, then there's going to be, that weird feeling, right? So maybe if they continue this and we kind of get used to it, then, we'll understand that if you want to know who's qualified and what the grid is for a race, you really have to look at the results the night before, because that's pretty much would solidify what's going to race.
And the other thing, I mean, honestly, the truth of the matter is you need to get down to an amount of classes that you can run. Maybe you run 4 races on Friday night or Friday afternoon, and then 12 races. So that's 16 classes or something.
Right.
I mean, that's true. If you had class consolidation where you could get them all in on Saturday and Sunday, then then you could shorten the schedule. You could come in there, start qualifying on Wednesday, and be done by Sunday, and truly have a short week. But until that happens, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
It needs to be done one way or the other. Either everyone comes in and qualifies and races over the 3 days, or you go 100% the other way. You come in the smaller group classes, qualify and race on the same day, and then you start expanding the program as it gets to the end.
Yeah, you can do
but
that too.
If you're going to have it where people can come and leave and the paddock's growing and shrinking, it needs to be 100% that way. So you groups that only have 8 or 9 cars, you're going to qualify and race on a Wednesday. And in groups that have more cars, you might get 2 qualifyings and race Thursday and do something like that, to where then the biggest classes with the most cars, which means the paddock will be the fullest, are left for the Saturday-Sunday show. And if you got the biggest class, you need to be penalized with being the last race on Sunday. I've said that for years. It doesn't need to rotate. It needs to go by what is best for the show, not rotating for people's travel arrangements. This is racing. It is what it is.
Gotcha. All right, guys, we're going to take another quick break because we ran long on that. And when we come back, we'll talk about all the Spec Miata Man drama. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Insiders Report. And so the runoffs for this past weekend, and of course one of the premier races for the runoffs every year is Spec Miata, one of the largest classes in SCCA racing and pretty much national club racing across all organizations. I'm going to throw this over to Jim first, because we all have interesting opinions about that race and what has happened. Jim, tell me how you saw the race and what you thought of.
Well, the first thing was some of the news was there was no news. This year we had no competitor threatening to do bodily harm to other competitors in the field. So that was the first thing, was just we got normal tech shed drama, normal people running over each other on the track, but we had none of those shenanigans with a component missing from this year's runoffs, and that was pleasant. A lot of people commented on it. I thought the racing was great. You had just a clinic put on by East Street Racing, practice team driving, executed team driving on the track, and that created some drama for Miss Charbonneau. Pat was, everybody watched the race. Pat Sandling was making that car wide, and he wasn't helping the guys that was running fourth and on back. But I didn't see him really make any illegal moves. These guys at the pointy end of this field has gotten to where they don't really race anymore.
So
they stay in line. They stay in line and ride, and so they're not really mixing it up as much as as what you might see. And let's face it, in a less experienced group. So when someone pushes the rules a little bit on their driving technique, it really offends everyone. And Charbonneau, that 6.7 car, he's short fuse. It's obvious by his actions on track he has a short fuse. And regardless what had happened up to the turn 1 incident, I think the videos that are being published shows that Pat's hands was straight, and he had a little left wheel jog into him to tell him, hey, I don't like you blocking, which I understand. But that's how I saw that. So one thing,
you have illegal moves, and then you have questionable moves, right? So I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, Peter. What are your thoughts? Were those questionable moves on Sandler's part? Because
they're all
people
questionable.
Have all their opinions.
All questionable, but legal and questionable are totally different.
Here you go. This is how I win this argument, and I've been waiting for 3 days to have this conversation. First of all, I want to say that I like and I'm friends with all 4 of the guys that were at the front. So what I have to say is just truly as Peter Keene. And I got to mention that I really like Craig Berry's hot-ass girlfriend because she is hot. So that's... And Drago's wife could spend the weekend here anytime she wants, but that's a whole other story. But the truth of the matter is...
That's a whole other story. And her comments to you at the when we're having cocktails are quite interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So the truth of the matter is that here's the deal. The Memphis Mafia went to that race knowing that they were a 3-car effort. They were always going to be a 3-car effort. They thought it was a roller derby. All right? And however they lined up, they were going to run their race to make sure that they stuck together. And there's man drama in the paddock we can talk about afterwards. They knew they were a 3-car team. Well, I hate to tell you this. Mr. Sandlin picked the role of the jam car. Well, right there, once you're the jam car, then, in my opinion, I think Andrew has some liberties there. Everybody knew going into that race, and if you look earlier on in the race, Andrew really gets a run, and those 3 guys don't help him. It was actually Winston Cup plate racing, but so in my opinion, I think that Charbonneau's got some liberties there to be aggressive. If it was me as Peter Keene, I'd have dumped him way earlier because I didn't want to race 3 guys. You dump them early.
Hey, and that's exactly what you got to do. You got to peel off the back of that group when they're teammates like that. And he was clearly faster than Pat in some areas, and Pat was faster here in others. Well, I argue that Pat has the fastest spec Miata in the country.
Well, and I agree with you.
I would agree.
Having raced him this year at Memphis myself in one of Drago's cars. But here's the deal. The after the race man drama, you could have just called it what it is. That guy was doing his job. I did everything I could to get around him. I was frustrated. That's perfectly reasonable. And he had a faster car than Pat. I think, you do things on track, okay, and you don't live up to it afterwards, whether you're on camera or talking to your friends. That's where I have a problem with it.
And Jim,
I understand their frustration.
Jim,
but let me say this, then I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you after this. The move of the race was Charbonneau, but if you're a real race watcher and a race connoisseur like we are, the actual move of the race to me was Drago blocking Charbonneau to let Pat and Barry pass him back to get back in third, and then they cycled him right back to the front. That was as tactful of a move from a club racer and as planned and coordinated as I've ever seen. It was pretty spectacular.
Well, and I agree with you. And the only thing
it was a good example of team driving.
Yeah,
and it was unfortunate. I'll give it to you in a second, Peter. And it was unfortunate that the one team member that Charbonneau did not get a good start, which was Bolanos, and Bolanos was never able to get up there and actually help Charbonneau out. Yeah. We were lucky enough to have front and back cameras on the top 5 cars in that race, and we're right now editing that, and it should be up in a day in reference to that whole top 5 car race there. We are going to put that up on GoRacingTV.
Well, I got a Balanos that works for me, and I like that kid. He was my second pick. I really thought he would be the dark horse. I was conversing with him before the race. He did a great job in qualifying. It's kind of sad he lost it there on the start. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, Balanos had an issue too towards the end. But the other thing, honestly, just go back to that. I really believe that Andrew, had some should have had some leeway. The other thing is, the point I wanted to make is, the last time we saw a 3-car train like that at a big race doing team driving, it didn't work out too well for Earnhardt. So, I mean, I feel bad how...
Hey, I'm going to turn my hat around backwards and put my coaching hat on that everyone knows me for. And I'm going to coach everyone out there for 1 second. And I'll coach Charbonneau directly. The way you move someone out of line when you're in that scenario, it's a light bumper-to-bumper direct tap in a braking zone to push somebody wide. If you do it at 5, they're on the rumbles, they lose their momentum. If you do it at 8, they're on the rumbles, they lose their momentum headed into the carousel. They're so subtle that corner workers hardly ever notice what happened. The guy in front of you just simply outbrakes you. You don't do it to where the guy's hand flies off the steering wheel. It's just subtle enough that when you're on the edge, it pushes them past the apex. They miss the track out. They either go off track a little bit or they got to crack the throttle. If you're wanting to drive and push the rules, that's the way you do it. It's not by having your fender inside a rear quarter panel and turning into the guy. It's too obvious. So that's my driving coach hat on. No one's going to like that I said that and that it's a technique.
Well, I have to say that if you look,
the other thing,
if you look at how Charbonneau made those passes, I think he brought some of his Spec Racer Ford experience in, and you see where he typically comes down into the braking zone. He'll bump you once right near the braking zone to give you a little more momentum, and then he just dips into the inside, and you'll see a quick
the other thing is, the other thing you guys got to understand is Pat had to run up the straightaway. If you look at turn 1, Pat pops out and actually is underneath Barry going in there, and then I'm sure he lifts, and that gives Charbonneau the run. I mean, you can't, you got to look at it as it's in totality. It wasn't that Pat was riding along there having a cold drink and Charbonneau just ran on the side of him. There were circumstances that led up to the event. Anyway, that's enough of that.
Oh, of course. All right, guys, we could probably talk all day about this one, but I have to say, hands off to Drago. He's been really trying hard for this event to win this championship, and he's definitely a fantastic driver. And kudos for winning the championship there.
He should have 2 championships. And unless he decides to quit, he's going to win a bunch of them. And he's driving exceptional. He's got his setup art down to a science, and they're making the best power that passes tech in the country. So it's just people are going to really have to go to work with what Peter talks about all the time: race strategy, expertise, and excellence, car preparation, excellence, and get it done on the track. And he's going to win quite a few of them. He's an exceptional guy.
I agree.
Yep. So, Peter, Lime Rock with Grand Am this weekend. What should we expect?
Hopefully, the number 90 Spirit of Daytona GoPro Corvette laps the field. G-Oil, I forgot G-Oil. So, I mean, we've been if there's some place that we've been really strong at, it's Lime Rock. I mean, we probably might even be better at Lime Rock than we are at Barber. So, we got big things on the line. We're essentially, I think, we're 3 or 4 points out of third place in the point standing. So, we're going on there, locked and loaded, and hopefully, get a good run in and try and be, bronze for the year-end championship, which, with some of the ups and downs we've had this year, we didn't really believe that we could get there, but, keep going.
Well, I'm pulling for you, Peter, but my biggest interest this weekend is at Freedom Autosport. Got a race team dedicating everything they do to our patriots that are overseas and in the military worldwide. 5 years in the making. They've been at this since 2008 when I helped start that team and get it going the first year with the invite of Tom Long and Mr. Whitus. And those guys have a chance to win a championship. And it is to say it's Compass 360 guys have earned theirs over the years, but these guys have put in 5 years of knocking on the door. It is their due, and I'm so pulling for them.
Excellent.
Yep, definitely. And Peter, I think, has the B-Spec date test and everything been found?
Essentially we had a meeting at the runoffs with all the major players, and there's going to be a B-Spec test, 2-day test, right after the 13 hours of Virginia, or VIR. So it's that's the last weekend in October. I don't know, it'll be the Sunday and Monday, and we're still working it out, trying to figure out what we're going to do for tech guys and everything, but everybody's going to bring a car, and so that's the next balancing test for 13. Plus, Irish Mike had both his cars there the weekend. There was a really good 3-car battle in the SSC race for 2 Hondas and a Mazda 2. Irish Mike had 2 cars sitting there, and there was a lot of buzz to have people going by those cars. And I mean, I honestly think that's an inexpensive very little consumables class for next year, and it will be its own class in SCCA Club. So B-Spec will be B-Spec in Club for 13. So
yeah, that's going to be great. We have some posts out there on the internet about the fields are small and blah blah blah. Well, this is the first year, but with all the ingredients, a club national class dedicated, you could pop into a pro race when you want to. Consumables cost low, car cost low, and the racing's going to be great. People should be jumping all over this.
Right.
Exactly. All right, guys, we're going to cut this one short and end this one. Thanks for joining me as usual. And folks out there, always remember you can tune in to Go Racing TV for all your club racing video needs. Until next time, you take care.